Here's the original Spider-Man and Carnage animated series 2-pack. And here's the bootleg that I got from AliExpress. This one I got on pre-order for about $90. And for the bootleg, I got it at about a third of the price. And straight off to the differences between this outer packaging, it's actually really hard to differentiate them. They really look similar. I've really scrutinized this outer packaging and I could only find 3 differences. First difference would be the tape that they use. The original has it broader, the bootleg has it narrower. The original has it at about 2.5 cm and the bootleg is about 1.5 cm. Here's a closer look. I think the difference in the width is quite obvious. And here's the original Green Goblin and MJ 2-pack. The original has the same sized tape. The second difference is that for the original, there are gaps within the cardboard. But for the bootleg, you can see it is flattened out. There isn't any gaps at all. Again, here's the Green Goblin and MJ 2-pack. The original has those gaps within the cardboard. Bootleg is flattened out. You can also see the gaps within the cardboard clearly at the bottom flap over here. Gaps, no gaps for the bootleg. The third difference that I managed to spot is on the printing. Near the left foot of Carnage, there are 4 printed windows. 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the original. On the bootleg, there is only 1, 2, and 3. Again, this printed window is consistent with the Green Goblin and MJ 2-pack. You can see clearly 4 printed windows at the side here. Here it is. And here's the bootleg. For my original packaging, there is the distributor sticker over here. I think some original ones might not have those stickers, but mine has it. And just to share, the serial number printed is the same, 23531, 23531. And there is a very slight difference in the quality of the printing. The original is actually slightly sharper and clearer compared to the bootleg, but it's really difficult to see in picture or video. Here's the picture of the 2 Spideys side by side. I think the original printing has it sharper and clearer compared to the bootleg. But like I said, it's really difficult to spot this difference if you don't have these 2 packagings side by side. I'll put these 2 packagings side by side. Do pause the video if you want to see whether you can spot any other differences between these 2 packaging. Alright, let's unbox the bootleg. I've already actually opened up the original. Let's see if the content of the bootleg is very similar in the way they packaged it inside. We have this printed thingy that we get every single time. Just like original, I think. Oh, look at that. The paper quality is actually different from the original. Yeah, the paper is different. The way they packed it is kind of similar. Here's where they put these extra tendrils for the original. This is the bootleg. Again, the difference in the size of the tape. The cardboard itself is very similar though. Almost the same. On the original, we have this extra piece of cardboard. I think on the bootleg there isn't. And it does look kind of similar, I guess. Here's the piece of paper. They do look similar. My original one is kind of like worn out. But yeah, they look kind of exactly the same actually. The bootleg has the paper kind of whiter. Here's the inner side. Not much difference between these 2 pieces of paper. And for the figures, Alright, here it is. There you go, Carnage bootleg version. And the bootleg Symbiote Spidey. And right out of the packaging, first thing I noticed is this very loose knee joint. Look at that. The other one is okay. This right knee is really loose. Here's the inner cardboard. Looks very similar. So like I said earlier, this paper packaging is very different. This is the original one. It is kind of like slightly more translucent-ish. But the bootleg one, the quality of the paper is really different. If you have bought these recent Marvel Legends figures where they have this paper packaging, it's really different. You can tell that it's different the moment you take it out from the box. For the Symbiote Spidey, I would say there are two main ways for you to spot the difference, and the main one is at the shoulder joint. For the original, the joint on the shoulder ball is completely hidden, but for the bootleg, you can see it is exposed. You can also see that the part where the front and back part of the torso joins up, there is a very slight gap compared to the original, which is really seamless. Same goes for the other side, hidden for the original, exposed joint for the bootleg, and also the slight gap at where the front and back part of the torso connects. There's also very slight excess plastic over here. So if you're buying this figure second-hand, one simple thing to spot is to ask the seller to show the shoulder ball joint over here. Another frontal difference that I feel is quite obvious is at the knees. For the original, from the thigh to the kneecap to the shin, they are all connected seamlessly. You can see it really joins up nicely at each of the grooves at the end of each of the part. But for the bootleg, it does not. It really looks like kind of a mess. The edges of the shin here isn't really as smooth and well done as the original. And if you were to look from the side, you can see the gaps, unlike the original. And the second thing is that this part over here protrudes out. Here's a closer look. This part of the joint comes out from the thighs, unlike the original, whereby it is really in line. Look at that. It doesn't come out like the bootleg. Even for the other leg of the bootleg, is the same. There. And also, there are gaps, unlike the original. Same goes for the elbow joints. Gap at the bootleg. Quite seamless for the original when the arms are straightened out. Here's the other elbow, just the same. Another visual difference, which is kind of hard to tell unless you have both the original and the bootleg figures side by side, is that on the bootleg, the blue cell shading is slightly brighter compared to the original, and the grey part over here is slightly darker than the original. And lastly, the condition of the physical figure itself is that the original is really solid, but for the bootleg, I've shared earlier, look at the extremely loose knee joints. The mid-torso joint is also really loose, and the joints of the arms comes off easily. For the original, you probably have to heat it up to pull it out, but here for the bootleg, it comes off really easily. The condition of the original is definitely way better than the bootleg. For the alternate hands, the only way to tell the difference is that on the bootleg, the white rectangle is wider or longer compared to the original. It's really quite significantly longer on the bootleg. For Carnage, it is a bit more difficult to tell them apart. You really need to scrutinize and look at the figure. First off is the shade of red. You kind of really need the figure to be in good lighting, because for the bootleg, the shade of red is actually slightly different on the torso compared to the arms. On the torso, the red is slightly dull, slightly darker compared to the arms and the legs. On the original, the red is really consistent throughout the whole body. Again, this one is the difficult difference to spot if you only have pictures from the seller, if you're buying it second-hand. Second difference is that on the bootleg, there is a very slight tinge of grey at the nose bridge area. You can only see if you really have a close-up look at it. The original does not have that. It is totally white at the nose bridge area. If you have the figure in hand, the original has this joint here, slightly darker than the rest of the body. But for the bootleg, this joint here is exactly the same as the body. And also, it has the same gap at the shoulder, just like the bootleg Symbiote Spidey. The front and the back part of the torso does not connect well, unlike the original, which really connects seamlessly. One small difference about the black paintwork that I managed to spot is that on the original, the paintwork on this upper torso is really thin compared to the bootleg, whereby it is thicker. What do I mean by that? When I bring it closer, this part over here at the edge of the upper torso, the black paintwork is really thinner compared to the bootleg, whereby the paintwork at the edge of the upper torso here is thicker. Excess plastic over here for the bootleg. The printing at the bottom of the feet is actually different. For the right foot, here's the difference. And for the left foot, here's the difference. Just one thing to note, unlike the Symbiote Spidey, the elbow and knee joints of the bootleg Carnage doesn't have those gaps. It looks quite similar to the original. Same goes for the elbow. The joints on the bootleg Carnage is done better than the bootleg Symbiote Spidey. And one final difference is that on the original, the ball pack has a darker red than the rest of the body. On the bootleg, the red is the same as the rest of the body. In terms of the physical figure itself, the bootleg Carnage is actually much more solid compared to the bootleg Symbiote Spidey. There are no loose joints, and yeah, it's actually pretty much quite firm as the original. Now, for the accessories, for the one that attaches to the back of the figure, for the bootleg, there is a hole at the peg. On the original, there isn't. Other than that, they pretty much look the same. For the alternate hands, on the original, the pegs are actually quite obviously darker red compared to the hands. For the bootleg, the shade of red of the peg is exactly the same as the hands. Here's a closer look there. You can see the peg has a darker shade of red compared to the bootleg, whereby the shade of red is the same as the hand itself. And lastly, here is the unmasked head. The paintwork on the original is definitely better. Look at the eyes, painted much better compared to the bootleg. And also the teeth on the bootleg has some minor unpainted parts. But actually overall, the bootleg doesn't really look that bad. On the original, there is a number printed on the inner side of the head. But for the bootleg, inside here is clean, no number. I think it can also be a number 2 printed instead of 1 for the original. Sometimes that happens. Whatever it is, the original has a number there. Bootleg doesn't. So there you have it. Here are the differences for the bootleg VHS Symbiote Spidey and Carnage. The bootleg Carnage figure is quite decent, but the quality of the Symbiote Spidey is really questionable. The original for both figures are definitely better. Thanks for watching. Do share your comments and check out my other videos at my channel.